They can't get the feed anyway. I just want to test so that I don't have it too high. A lot of times I have it too high or too low, or that's why I don't like this thing. Does that sound good? We okay? Okay. Think we're good. Oh, I forgot my. That's what happens every time I look down. I huff. Every time I look down, I huff. Well, good morning. You're going to have to bear with us. We had some technical difficulties with the microphone, and so I'm not used to using this thing, so it's going to make weird noises. Just bear with us and forgive any weird noises you hear online or in person. It's good to be here. It's good to have everybody here in our classroom time. I'm excited about this week because this is a good section, and they're all good sections. But we are in Matthew chapter 18. If you're just joining us, we have been plodding through the Gospel of Matthew, and we'll continue to do so for a while. We're going to start at verse 21 this week. And we've been in chapter 18 for like almost 5 weeks. And if you think, chapter 18 starts with them, the disciples coming up to Jesus and asking, who's the greatest? Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? We talked about that. He doesn't answer that. He doesn't say, well, you guys shouldn't be thinking like that. He says, brings a kid in, and he says, this is your model right here. And then he goes on and he starts talking about interpersonal relations. He starts talking about causing one of these little ones, and then he shifted from talking about these little ones to those who have changed and become like these little ones, his disciples. And so he starts talking about anybody who causes one of those to stumble. And he talks about stumbling blocks, and he talks about, and now we're in the part where we're going to talk about forgiveness. And remember, we talked about throughout this, the parable of the lost sheep. The whole goal of all this is not to prove who's right or wrong. It's reconciliation. The goal is to bring that sheep back into the fold. And so the goal of all these strategies that Jesus gives is to bring unity, to bring us back together. And so we get to verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Remember when you were a kid in school, or maybe in college, I don't know, and you always had that one kid that tried to suck up to the teacher? You know, maybe, if you don't remember it, it was probably you. But you know, that one kid that you would always be, you know, or you forgot to grade the homework, and the rest of us wanted to pummel this child. You know what I'm talking about. In college, when I was a Bible major, we had the guys who would do what we call the Jesus juke. And all that means is this professor would ask a seemingly innocuous question, and this person would try to seem holier than everybody else by bringing Jesus into it. Like the preacher says, the professor would say, well, we're fixing to get out for Thanksgiving break. What are you guys thankful for? And you'd have one guy say turkey and one guy say mashed potatoes. And I'm thankful for Jesus. And it's like, oh my God. Like we are not all thankful for Jesus. I mean, come on. But that's what Peter's doing here. He's coming up and trying to go, look how holy I am, Jesus. I'm not going to just forgive my brother once. I'm going to forgive my brother 7 times. And I think he's expecting a couple of strokes, a couple of attaboys, look how great. Oh, Peter, that's way too much. You shouldn't have to do all that. But that's not what he gets. In fact, Jesus is not impressed, and he ups the ante, so to speak. Peter says 7, and Jesus says, no, not 7. Try 77. And, I know some of your versions will say 70 times 7. The literal translation is 77, but it gets confusing, and it doesn't really matter. Jesus is saying a whole bunch. And that's the point. You're not supposed to be checking off and go, I used to have a friend who was a preacher, and he would look at you and say, look, you're on 76. But that, I don't think that's the point. We're not keeping track. Jesus is saying your scope is too small, but he's saying a lot more, and that's what I want us to get in this week, because it's really interesting. So I'm gonna ask you a question here, and don't be embarrassed, because I know in church we're not supposed to talk about that we actually watch movies and stuff, but I want to talk about what's your favorite revenge movie? Favorite revenge movie, okay, or not even your favorite, just the one that pops into your head first, okay? And we love our revenge movies. You start going through these, and there's a ton of them. And so I'm going to let Emily and then Jason. The Punisher, yes. See, never heard of it. There's good versions and bad versions. There's a Dolph Lundgren version that you don't want to watch, just because it's just bad. But Payback, something like that. There's a Mel Gibson one called Payback that's a revenge movie. Jason, what did you have? Oh, there you go. Bringing in the Charles Bronson, the original mechanic, not the Jason Statham mechanic, the Charles Bronson mechanic. Okay, somebody else. Come on. Revenge movies. Wait. Say it again, Jerry. Make My Day, Dirty Harry. Right? All the Dirty Harry movies, Clint Eastwood. I got it. Okay, that's a good one. There was one over here, Tim. Taken. I will find you, and I will kill you. That's iconic. His whole diatribe there, Jason. The Revenant. Ooh, that's good. See, I like Jason going with some not right off the top. We can even go broader than just action, though, y'all. What about Heathers? Anybody ever seen Heathers? Right? Kara has. She starts laughing. She knows what I'm talking about. Heathers was a revenge movie, and it's about a bunch of mean little girls. I mean, it's not it's not an action movie, but it is. I mean, what about Hamlet? I mean, whether you talk about the movie or the play, revenge is a major component in that. What about The Lion King? I mean, revenge is a component in this, whether you're looking at it from Scar's perspective or whatever. Nobody's even mentioned John Wick. I mean, I know nobody's ever seen that because it's rated R, but that's a revenge movie. We talked about Dirty Harry, but we didn't talk about High Plains Drifter or Hang 'em High or any of Clint Eastwood's spaghetti westerns. Just about every single one of those was revenge movies. Just about every Bruce Lee movie was a revenge movie. Sir? The Italian Job. There you go. Or for that matter, Ocean's 11. That's a revenge movie because they're trying to get back at the casino guy or whatever. We could do this for a long time because the point is there's lots of revenge movies, right? There's lots of we like that. What's the first revenge story in the Bible? Cain and Abel, right? What happens with Cain and Abel? Cain and Abel are twins, right? I mean, go read the passage Adam only went in once. So Cain and Abel are twins, and Abel is a rancher, for lack of a better word, shepherd, whatever you want to call him. He deals with livestock. And Cain, on the other hand, is a more agricultural farmer, right? And so then what happens? Cain gets jealous of what? Yeah. Yeah. He thinks that God is approving of his brother's sacrifice more than his. Now, did God ask for sacrifices? There's not anywhere in Genesis 1 through 4 where he asked for sacrifices. There's not anywhere in there where he told them to bring a sacrifice. Abel brings a sacrifice and lays it before God. Well, actually, Cain is the first one to bring the sacrifice. If you read the passage, Cain is bringing the sacrifice and Abel comes along behind him. But what's the difference between their sacrifices? One's meat and one's vegetables? Is this a story that teaches us not to be vegetarians? Do what? Yeah, might be fruit, but you know. So we're saying vegans. Don't be vegans because God doesn't approve of vegans. I'm just joking. If you're a vegan watching this, God loves you. Okay. So, Cain brought a sacrifice. Abel brought the first fruits and the best of his crop. And so when God favors Abel over Cain, you get the impression from the text, God doesn't come out and say this, you get the impression from the text that Abel's sacrifice was bringing God his best, whereas Cain's was kind of the lint in his pocket, you know. Oh, here, I'll give you a little bit, you know, thanks. It's like it's like tipping the waiter, you know, keep the change, God. Thanks for all you gave me, keep the change. And so there you go. And then what happens? They go out in the field. There's a confrontation. Cain kills Abel. Very first murder in the Bible. And he's mad at him. And so then what happens? God confronts Cain. And what does God say? Now, I love, he knows where Abel is, right? He knows where Abel is. Where's your brother Abel? He wants Cain to confess. And what does Cain say? Famous line. I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? How am I supposed to know where he's at? And God says, his blood is crying out to me from the ground. Or something to that effect. The earth cries out with his blood, or I don't have the whole thing memorized yet. I'm only up to chapter 2. It's a joke. But what else? So then what happens? Cain is smited because of, no, God doesn't smite him. What does he do? The mark of Cain. Have you ever thought about the mark of Cain? There's a lot of conversation about the mark of Cain. What was it? How did it work? Because the Bible doesn't tell us. It just says, God says, look, you're going to be a wanderer. I'm kicking you out. You're going to be a wanderer and a vagabond. You're going to roam the earth, and you're not going to be here anymore. And Cain says, that's I can't do this. That punishment is too great for me. As soon as I get out there in the world, somebody's going to kill me. Now, we're not going to talk about the logistics of how there's other people that could kill him and all that, but just take it for face value, and that's a Genesis class. When we get there, we'll do that. But he says somebody's going to kill me because remember, they're twins. And so everybody's going to see me, oh, is that Abel or Cain? Well, that's Cain. Oh, Cain killed Abel. Oh, well, you see what I'm saying? Everybody's going to know what happened. Everybody's going to know who I am. Somebody's going to kill me. Which is funny because if you think about it, you start thinking about, well, why didn't God punish Cain more? I mean, this is eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth time, right? But I can make the case that I don't think Cain knew what death was. Nobody had ever died before. I'm mad at my brother, and so I'm going to beat him. I don't mean to kill him because nobody's ever died before. I don't know that there's such a thing as death. I don't know that I can stop him from breathing. And so it may be that when God says, where's your brother? And Cain says, I don't know what happened to him. He may not have been trying to be evasive. He may have been telling the truth. Because he's never seen anybody die before. I hit him and then he laid there and he never got up and I don't know what happened to him. Maybe. We don't know that. I mean, I'm just saying, there's people living to 100 and something and whatever. Well, I mean, we don't know. But anyway, I'm rabbit trailing. I'm the one doing it now. The mark of Cain. He says, I'm going to put a mark on you so that nobody will kill you. And there are some translations that translate that word mark as a sign, which doesn't help us at all because we still don't know what it is. There's all kind of different things. There are some people who believe that God put his name like in a tattoo across Cain's forehead. There are some, and these are mostly, when I say people, these are mostly Jewish scholars, rabbis. This is what's been taught through the centuries, okay? I'm not just, polling the internet. You do that and you get a lot of weird stuff. But some say that it was a tattoo. Some say that he was changed in another way. Hang on, I got to do this because I'm old. The Hebrew word can mean sign or token, and so it could be a visible mark on Cain's body. It could be some other kind of symbol of divine protection. One Jewish teaching is that he was given leprosy, and that's where that came from. There are then even crazier teachings. There's one teaching that comes from some of the white supremacists that this was where different races came from, which is, I'm sorry, ridiculous because this is in the Middle East, so maybe if God turned him white, he would stand out. Probably not the way that they're thinking of it. But anyway, I don't buy that one. There's even one Jewish rabbi teaching, traditional teaching, that the mark was actually a dog, that God gave him a dog. Like a guard dog to protect him. I'm not making this up. That's a legitimate teaching. I don't buy that one either. But hey, I want to give you all the information because it doesn't really matter what the mark is. God put a mark on Cain, and what did he say when he put the mark on him? That's what's important. Genesis 4, verse 15. But the Lord said to him, not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over. 7 times. Now, some translations will say to the 7th generation. Because, anybody who kills Cain, I'm going to kill him 7 times, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You only get once, right? So, to the 7th generation. And so, literally, it's more like somebody kills Cain, you're going to get killed 7 generations down. You see that? And so it's like 7 times. And so I don't know that that's what Peter meant when he brought this out. I do know that's what Jesus meant, and I'll tell you why. Because he says, let's Genesis, we'll go back to chapter 4. And so Cain has a wife. Don't ask where he got a wife because I don't know. That's another question for another time. But she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Cain was then building a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. Now, this is 7 years later, okay? 7 years have passed. So he's 7 years down the road. He's supposed to be a wanderer. Remember, that was his curse. 7 years later, he's building a city. To Enoch was born Arad, the father of Mehuel. Mehuel and a bunch of kids on down the road to the father of Lamech. And Lamech is a direct descendant of Cain. He is the 7th generation descendant of Cain. Stay with me, it gets better. Lamech married two women. What Lamech is most famous for is he is the guy who introduces polygamy. There's no polygamy in the Bible until Lamech. You can make the case that there may not have been polygamy in the world until Lamech. Lamech takes two wives, one named Ada and the other Zillah. We're in chapter 4, verse 20. Ada gave birth to Jabal, and he was the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who play stringed instruments and pipes. Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Read that Tubal-Cain's the one that started making weapons. Tubal-Cain's sister was Naamah. And now here we go. Verse 23, Lamech's going to start talking, okay? This is the first gangster rap in the Bible. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Some of y'all don't know what that means, but just bear with me. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, listen to me. Wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. And if Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. Bell's ringing, right? There's only 2 places in the Bible where 7 and 77 are connected. Genesis 4 and Matthew 18. It's not an accident. Jesus wasn't just pulling numbers out of the air. I've heard preachers preach for years that, Jesus was just trying to say a whole big number. He's directly connecting this to the story of revenge and the story of Lamech. Lamech says, I have killed a man for wounding me. Now, there is a Jewish extra-biblical apocryphal book of Jasher that says that Lamech accidentally killed Cain. That he's the 7th generation and this man does something to him and wounds him somehow and he doesn't know who it is and he kills. That's not Bible, okay? We don't know whether that's true or not. Okay? So take that for what it's worth. It's just a story. But that's the story that's connected to this. The word, this is another example of translators cleaning up the Bible, because the word young man is not young man. The word young man is boy. Lamech's a bad dude, like not a nice individual. He's saying, I killed a man for wounding me. I killed a boy, a child, for injuring me. And if Cain's going to be avenged 7 times, Lamech's going to be avenged 77 times. So you see what I mean? The first gangster rap in the Bible. Lamech's rapping writing this poem about how bad a dude he is. All right? I'm the baddest of the bad, and Cain ain't got nothing on me, and I'm going to kill anybody that messes with me. And so there you go. So when asked about forgiveness, how many times should I forgive my brother? Up to 7? Jesus says no, 77. Remember what I told you. The only 2 places in the Bible, Matthew 18 and Genesis 4, Peter and Jesus talking about forgiveness, and Lamech's gangster rap. So how does Jesus' reference connect to the idea of forgiveness? Because this is not an accident. And how does that play in there? How does that make any sense? Jason? Yeah, that's what he's saying. This is Hebrew poetry, and it's not the way we write poetry, so we have a hard time understanding it. But this is the it's a poem. It could be a song. We don't know that for sure because there's nothing that says there's music to it, so you can't really say that. But it probably was, because that's songs are how you remember things, and at least a lot of people. Revenge, that revenge and forgiveness are directly connected, because if somebody has done something to me that makes me, isn't that my natural instinct? And that's but my natural instinct is to hit back. That's why I talked about all the revenge movies. We like those, and by we I mean human beings, because and you can, this is not just Americans, you go across cultures and you can go across any culture in the world and you'll find revenge movies, revenge books, revenge stories. We like those. We like the bad guy to get his due, right? We like that because that's our nature. This that Jesus is talking about is not our nature. Forgiveness is not natural. In fact, I can make the case that it's really, really unnatural. It's really, really outside of anything that we would normally do. Jace? Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And most recovery programs, I haven't polled them all, but most of the ones I've ever heard of, forgiveness is a major component. Major. Cody? Why would you do that? I buy that. Go ahead, Miss Pat. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Anybody, you know, and I've heard just like y'all have the sermons about, oh, you know, we just need to forgive, we just need to turn the other cheek, and that sounds so easy, but that's one of the hardest things to do, at least in my case. Maybe y'all are holier than I am, and God bless you if you are, because I can tell you there are people in my life that I still today, 30 years after the fact, struggle to forgive. And because it's hard. And anybody who says it's not, it ain't doing it right. I'm just saying. Because it's, and so you read this and you go, well, wait a minute, because these people are all they've been raised on all these Jewish stories. They know who Lamech is. And so when Jesus says not 7 but 77, that makes a ding go off in them too. And so they're asking the same questions we are. Wait, what? What? And Jesus, as he so masterfully does every single time, answers with a story. Pick it back up in 18, verse 23. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted, is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Stop right there. The literal Greek here is 10,000 talents. And talents is another one of those words we've talked about before where the translators didn't know what it meant, so they just didn't translate it. It's like baptism. Baptism, they weren't really sure what it meant, so we just took the Greek word and wrote it with English letters and said, there you go. You just make that whatever you want it to be. And I'm serious. That's and so the Greek here, the talent, we're not really they weren't really sure what it means. Now, through other sources that have been found since then, we figured out that a talent was equivalent to 20 years' wages for an average laborer. Let that sink in for a minute. So 10,000 talents is really just a way to say a whole lot of money. You with me? He's saying an immeasurable amount, an insurmountable amount, a literally unpayable amount. It's like when my kids were little and they would say, I bet that cost $1 bajillion million. It's the same thing. It's just a great big number is what they're saying. I mean, we can do the math. You want to try to do the math? Somebody do the math. We got any mathematicians? So 10,000, say what? 500 years? 500 years worth of wages. And so it's unpayable. This is a unpayable amount, which Jesus likes this. Jesus likes to take these stories and he gives it this ridiculousness, he deliberately does things throughout his stories, you'll see, where it gathers people's attention because it doesn't quite make sense or it's just so outlandish. I mean, he's talking about logs sticking out of somebody's eye. That's not ever happened. And so, you know, he's using that for effect here. And so since he was, verse 25, since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. Now, this was a common practice. This was not that outlandish. If you could not pay, and you had been given ample opportunity to pay, and you had been still extended further opportunity to pay, and finally you were sold into slavery to work off your debt. And not just you, but you and your entire household and everything you own would be sold. Now, here we got to take a moment here because you'll encounter people nowadays who use slavery in the Bible as a justification or why the Bible is not valid. Well, you know, how can it support slavery in the Bible and the human chattel slavery of America are two different things. This is more like indentured servitude. This guy's slavery, he would go to work for this guy, but at some point, if his debt was completed, he could be emancipated. He could be free. He wasn't this guy's property as much as he was this guy's servant. So that's important because we in America hear slavery and we hear something that's different than what's in here. It doesn't even make it okay. It doesn't make this an acceptable practice, but it does explain the casual attitude of many of the biblical authors towards this is actually a system of getting out of debt. It actually is a way. It's a help to this individual because they can never do this. Verse 26, at this the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. Now, this heightens the absurdity, right? Dick just told us 500 years, 10,000 talents, 200,000 some odd wages. Is that right? I don't know. Y'all got to. I'm not a math guy. I can talk to you about Greek and Hebrew, but math, y'all are on your own. He will never pay this back. There's no way he's ever going to pay this back. So when he falls to his knees and says, "Oh, be patient with me. I'll pay this back," no, you won't ever. And there's nothing you're going to do. There's no way you're ever going to make enough money to pay this back. It's out of your control. It's way more than you can ever afford. Verse 27. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. Now, literally, this is 100 denarii. A denarii was like one day's wage. So this guy, he goes out and finds somebody. He owed the master $1 bajillion million, and he goes out and finds somebody that owes him like a couple of thousand. Okay? He grabbed him and began to choke him. "Pay back what you owe me," he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, "Be patient with me and I'll pay it back." Sound familiar? Jesus used the exact same words this guy just said to the master is being said to him. Verse 30. But he refused. Instead, He went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. Now, notice the difference here. The master was going to sell him and his family into servitude, sell everything that he owned, but there was a light at the end of that tunnel. It's feasible that he could work enough and all his family could work enough, depending on how much family he had, that he might pay off the debt. I don't know. Throwing somebody in prison, how's that going to work? Kind of hard to make money when you're in prison. And he's never going to pay off the debt. He's never going to pay off the $2,000 he owes. Prison is not really a great way of getting your money back. And so in a parable full of ridiculousness, right? Ridiculous movements, this is the most ridiculous yet. I mean, we're supposed to read this. His hearers were supposed to hear this as, that would never happen. That would never happen. That's like a bank that's been bailed out of billions of dollars worth of loans, then turning around and foreclosing on a bunch of people. That would never happen, right? That would never happen. It would be like Christians presuming forgiveness for a history that includes all manner of violence done in the name of God, calling Muslims violent. That'd never happen. It would be like Christians who've been forgiven all manner of sinfulness telling the gay man who walks into church, you're not welcome here. That would never happen. You get me? I told you, forgiveness is hard. It's not a joke. It's not easy. It's not, oh, you should just forgive that person. It doesn't work that way. It's hard. And that's the point here. Jesus is saying, here it comes. And I see, Cody, I'm coming though. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servants in, you wicked servant. I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. And so the final punishment is worse than the first. And then Jesus slams it home. This is how this is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart. Wow. Cody. I'm sorry. Yep. Please. Forgive us as we forgive those who and that is. And I mean, we got to be honest. I won't quid pro quo. I like an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth a lot better than I do as you've been forgiven much, you should forgive much. I don't like that. That's hard. It's not natural. It's difficult. Anybody who preaches this passage as, oh, we just all should learn to forgive, hasn't really done it. Ooh. Ms. Pat said, and I'm going to do a bad job of rephrasing this, but sometimes, well, this kind of forgiveness, not just sometimes, this kind of forgiveness is only going to come when I've been on my knees praying diligently for for that person, but also for myself. It's not natural. Okay, go ahead, Melissa. I was trying to decide whether I was going, so go ahead. Oh, ooh. Oh, man. Melissa's going to make it hard. She said it's harder it's easier for me to forgive somebody who's wronged me than it is for me to forgive somebody who's wronged someone that I care about. That's true. And it's easier for me to forgive someone who's wronged me than it is for me to forgive me. And that's true too, Cody. And but again, it's Jesus is calling us to this ridiculous forgiveness. That's why I keep using that word. Because this is ridiculous. Ridiculous forgiveness. Radical forgiveness. Dick? Okay. It's not natural. Oof. Yeah. That's true. It's not a one and done thing. It's a process. And it's about me understanding grace, honestly. It's about me understanding that I have a debt that is immeasurable, innumerable, 100 bajillion dollars or whatever. I have this debt that I could never ever repay, and it was forgiven me. And then I go out and I'm going to start telling other people how they're going to hell. I'm that servant. And I got to admit, my toes hurt because he's stepping all over them. He's kicking me right where I live. And Jesus is saying, I want you to be John Wick level forgiveness. Some of y'all don't get that reference. So I want y'all to be Dirty Harry level forgiveness. I want y'all to be, I want you to be Lamech of forgiveness. Not just what's required, not just what God has extended, but ridiculous amounts. And again, that's easy to preach. It's easy to talk about, but it's hard. Those of you watching at home, be back at 10 o'clock, and we're going to wrap this up. Those of you here, hang around for just a second. I love you, but there's some things I don't want on the World Wide Web. So you guys cut the feed. Tell me I'm clear.